Hello fellow Vite enthusiasts, thanks for joining me today. My name's Ben McCann. I'm one of the creators of the SvelteKit web framework. SvelteKit is a Svelte web framework built on top of Vite. I'm going to be talking today about some of the tools and plugins in the Vite ecosystem that excite me most. I'm going to be doing the demos in SvelteKit, but you should be able to follow along whether you're using any framework or language. I started experimenting with Vite shortly after we started building SvelteKit. We made the jump shortly thereafter and really feel like we made the right choice. Vite 2 is a completely different beast than its predecessors. Importantly for us, it was framework agnostic and supported things like server-side rendering and had great out-of-the-box performance. Vite's large plugin ecosystem and approachable plugin API were key reasons that we decided to build on top of Vite. Vite had a compelling plugin ecosystem from day one because it's built on top of the Rollup plugin API. And that means you can use Rollup plugins in any of your Vite projects. And there are some really handy ones like Rollup Plugin Visualizer that you might find to be useful. Vite, Svelte, and SvelteKit are built with a package manager called PNPM. If you want to contribute to one of these projects, you're going to be running PNPM as part of that workflow. And PNPM has a few nice advantages. Importantly, it allows you to have multiple packages as part of a single codebase. It's also really fast. So I'm going to be using PNPM today so that you don't have to wait for me while I'm installing packages. Let's go ahead and create a new Vite-based project. We'll run PNPM create Vite at latest. We need to choose a project name, so I'll go with Vite ecosystem. And then I will choose Svelte since that's what I'm most familiar with, and SvelteKit. We'll choose the skeleton project, which is basically just an empty SvelteKit project. And then just go with the standard JavaScript one, and we will choose vitest, which I'll talk about later. All right, now we'll jump into the project. And let's take a look at the package.json that got created. When you create a new SvelteKit project, we set you up with a package.json that just uses Vite as the build command. This gives us the power to really leverage the Vite ecosystem. Whether you're using SvelteKit or using Svelte directly with Vite on your own, you can look at the Vite documentation or the documentation for any Vite plugin and see immediately how to get it to work in a SvelteKit project. Another thing you may notice in the default package.json file is that it contains type module. Type module means that JS files will be interpreted as ESM. Because we were starting with a clean slate when building SvelteKit, we were able to be ESM only from the beginning. Now the Vite ecosystem is moving in that direction as well. In Vite 5, we'll start issuing warnings that Vite should be included with an import rather than a require. Most Vite-based frameworks have already been updated in preparation for this move, so there's a good chance that you won't have to do anything and the move will be completely transparent to you. Note that Vite will still support building non-ESM code, especially in library mode. This change has big advantages because it means Vite will only need to distribute the ESM version of the library itself. And this matters in ways you might not realize. For example, when you load learn.svelte.dev, we start up Vite in the browser so that you can build SvelteKit apps as you follow along with the tutorial. We do this using a really cool technology from StackBlitz called web containers that allows us to execute code for Node.js in the browser. A smaller ESM-only Vite distributable will mean faster loading tutorials for everyone. Creating your project as ESM-only is a move I'd highly recommend. Browsers can load ESM natively, and your build and test chain get to be a lot simpler when you're not having to convert between formats, and it's also faster. Most packages out there today are Vite and ESM ready, but there are occasionally a few packages you'll run into that might give you problems. The first thing I always recommend if you hit one of these packages is to load it with a tool called Publint. We set up vitest earlier when running the new project creation wizard, and there are a number of reasons that SvelteKit chose to recommend vitest as its default testing framework. One is that it works great in ESM-only projects. Another is that it can transform your code using your existing Vite config. So if you have TypeScript files or Svelte files, Vitest will compile those to JavaScript using your existing toolchain, and it just works great out of the box, whereas I found that to be pretty tricky to set up with most other testing frameworks. Vitest also has a just like API, so users from other testing frameworks are going to feel right at home. One feature I like in Vitest is watch mode. When you run Vitest, it enters watch mode automatically. As you make changes to your file, the tests will automatically be rerun. You may also prefer to run your tests from one of the Vitest IDE extensions. There's support for VS Code, JetBrains, and more. I'll spend a lot of time today talking about things that you can do in Vite with plugins, but I also wanted to take some time to talk about things that are just built into Vite that might require a plugin and other bundlers. A lot of Vite's performance-enhancing features fall into this category. SvelteKit is very performance conscious, and as part of Svelte 5, we'll be building on that for meaningful performance improvements. One important performance feature we really leverage from Vite is code splitting and CSS splitting, which typically requires a plugin while using other bundlers. We'll load the SvelteKit website, and you can see there are several CSS and JS files. Vite intelligently combines both JS and CSS output up into chunks that can be shared across pages without loading unused code. You'll notice that the files are loaded in parallel rather than a waterfall where one file is requested, which in turn requests another. We're able to accomplish this using Vite's built-in preload functionality. Preloading these files ensures that they're requested as soon as you hit the page, and other bundlers preloading might require a plugin or that the user manually annotate which chunks to preload, whereas Vite has great built-in defaults for this. This results in really great performance out of the box. The only thing that we've done on the Svelte sites to optimize them is to install vite-imagetools, which I'll talk about later. Vite also does a few other nice things here for us, such as generating output with hashed file names so that they can be safely cached forever. And when using any recent web server which supports HTTP 2 or newer, these files are loaded in parallel for maximum performance. Another great feature Vite has built in is PostCSS support. You just add a PostCSS config and you're off to the races. The Svelte community has built a great set of tools called Svelte adders. When you run a Svelte adder, it will automatically set up your project for some integration. And there are Svelte adders for PostCSS and Tailwind. So you just run one command and then you're set up and ready to go. With one command, you can add Tailwind to your project. Let's go ahead and run that now with pnpx svelte add at latest tailwind CSS. With one command, it's taking care of everything that we need to set up Tailwind. Let's go ahead and look at some of the things it's done. The first thing that we can see that it's done is it's added the library. It's also set up our PostCSS config. And you can see that it's also added auto prefixer, which handles adding browser-specific prefixes like -webkit or -mos to your CSS. Then it's also added a Tailwind config file. And it's also set up our common styles for us. Now let's add a piece of Vite functionality that doesn't come built in. There's a set of plugins called unplugins, created by Vite maintainer Antfu, which works across a number of different bundlers like Vite, Rollup, Webpack, ESBuild, and more. Let's try out one of the unplugin packages, unplugin icons. First, we're going to need to install it. Unplugin icons will make available a huge set of icons as virtual imports. That they're virtual imports means they don't exist on the file system, but get generated as you request them. We do need to install the icon package though. We want to use some logos, so let's install those. All right, now that we've got those packages installed, we can update our Vite config to use the plugin. And we will need to use the plugin now. And we'll need to tell it that we're using Svelte. Let's open up our page. Now that we've got the Vite plugin set up, we can use the icon. And let's run the web server so that we can see it. There's our icon. It's super tiny, so let's make it a little bigger. There we go. Now we've got a great icon. We do have here a TypeScript error, so let's fix that real quick. We just need to import the types from the package. Now if we go back to types, the type error should be fixed. There are a lot more plugins like unplugin auto import, which automatically imports common imports if you get tired of importing the common APIs. So be sure to go check out the other unplugins. And maybe we'd like to have more than just an icon on our page, so let's include an image. Now I've already included a picture of our fearless leader here, so I'm going to go ahead and reference that. And there we go. Now we have a beautiful picture. Svelte is warning me that I haven't added an alt tag, so I'll go ahead and do that. All right, great. Now the only problem with this is that this image is totally unoptimized. So what we can do instead is go ahead and import it. Then it will go through Vite's build pipeline, which means it'll get built with a unique hash in its name for caching and inlined if it's small enough. So first I'm going to go ahead and move it to live next to our page to make it just a little simpler to reference. Now the image has disappeared, but let's go ahead and we'll go ahead and reference that now. Okay, and now our image is back, but we can take this a step further in optimizing it. I've gone ahead and installed vite-imagetools, so let's take a look at that. I've already added it to our Vite config. I had it commented out, but now I'll uncomment it. And so what this is telling it to do is convert our image here to avif and webp and return a JavaScript object that can be used to generate a picture tag. Now our site's broken because it doesn't know how to handle this JavaScript object. But what I've done is I've gone ahead and added a Svelte image component. And this image component does know how to handle the picture tag that we're receiving. So now we can go back to our page and use that image component. And now our image is back. And if we go to Chrome for a second, we can see that we have a picture tag that's displaying an avif representation of this image. And so that's going to be a much smaller image that loads much faster. What we set up earlier was project level settings, but you can also set specific image transformations on an individual image. So we can do that here. Let's add a blur. Now I haven't yet set up the TypeScript declarations for this project to let it know that blur is a valid query parameter. I'm just going to go ahead and remove blur for now so that it doesn't feel like you've forgotten your glasses for the rest of this presentation. So now we have a highly optimized image. I think my only complaint here is that it's a little unnatural to use imports for images. What we'd really like to do is just reference the file. And so there's a great preprocessor that allows us to do this. And this is set up here on our Svelte config file here. And what a preprocessor does is it takes a Svelte file and it transforms it in some way before passing it to the Svelte compiler. What we're doing here is we're taking image tags with source attributes, and we're taking that source attribute and we're adding it as an import. So this import can get generated for us automatically. So we can go ahead and remove this. And now we can just reference it the way we'd like to. So now we've got a really nice setup with an optimized image. And you can go ahead and use vite-imagetools today in a Svelte project. I highly recommend it. In the future, we'll be looking to bundle this all together to make it really nice and easy to use from SvelteKit projects. And there's one more thing you can do with vite-imagetools that I think is pretty cool. And that's that you can use Vite's import meta glob syntax to import an entire directory of images. So now that we've got this awesome site, maybe we'd like to set up Google Analytics on it to find out how many visitors we're getting. I did that on my own site, but unfortunately when I did, my Google page speed score fell by about 10 points. Now it turns out there's a great solution for that. It's a script called Partytown. And what Partytown does is it moves scripts that you select off of your main thread and into workers. All we have to do to set up Partytown is to first add the Vite plugin. And then we use Partytown in our page by including the Partytown snippet. And we set type equals text Partytown on any scripts that we want to move to the Partytown worker thread. And after that, you'll have a much faster site. Thus far, we've been building a web application, but what if we want to distribute it as a desktop app? For that, there's Tauri and Electron. You can set up Tauri with just a few easy steps. Tauri uses the operating system's web view for a lighter experience than a full browser, and to keep things lightweight, it uses an allow list that includes only the selected APIs in the final distributable. It also includes a self-updater and offers plugins. Tauri applications start at only around 0.5 MB. Tauri has excellent documentation for Vite-based projects and a number of Vite-specific tips, so definitely check it out. Thus far, we've mainly been using existing integrations, but I also wanted to show you just how easy it is to write your own Vite plugin. All we have to do is give it a name and implement a hook in the plugin API. Now this plugin doesn't do a whole lot, but I just wanted to show you how simple it is and that you can even do it inline in your existing config. They're very easy to experiment with, so don't be shy about giving it a try. Another Vite integration I have to mention is Storybook. Storybook lets you develop components in isolation. Now when you're developing components, they might have multiple states such as a loading state, disabled state, and potentially multiple error states. Navigating through your app to trigger all of these different states might be challenging, and some might be even harder to trigger, like network errors. With Storybook, you can open a component directly and see its different states with just a few clicks of a button. Setting up Storybook is easy. You simply run sb-init and it will detect that you're using Vite, and in this case SvelteKit, and install the appropriate plugins like Storybook Builder Vite. For Svelte apps, I'd also recommend one additional plugin that you don't get by default, and that's Storybook add-on SvelteCSS. Storybook add-on SvelteCSS lets you write stories with Svelte syntax as opposed to how you'd normally write them, which is in JavaScript. This feels much more comfortable and familiar for Svelte users, and in fact, there's a couple of things you can't express in JavaScript syntax that you can when using Svelte syntax. So let's go check out these stories. This is from a project called Gradio, and they've set up Storybook to build with every PR that they get on GitHub. And here you can see the stories that we were looking at earlier and change some of the parameters. That wraps up a whirlwind tour of the Vite ecosystem. Hopefully you've gotten some idea of what's possible and maybe even been inspired to go write your own Vite plugin. Go check out the Vite documentation and SvelteKit documentation, as well as Awesome Vite, and the repository for this talk. Everything I've talked about is linked to from those resources.